breaking down all the plays and getting you in the action. We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast, powered by Marco's Pizza.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone into the latest edition of the BCSN Nation podcast. It is episode 38 here on May 31st, 2023. We are powered by Marco's Pizza. I'm Justin Feldkamp alongside Mark Nell. So it's a edition of baseball on this podcast. Yes, we have the Anthony Wayne girls softball team in the Division I state semifinals. That game will be on Friday. They win, they play on Saturday. Good luck to the Lady Generals, avenging 2 losses in the regular season to fellow nationally ranked Springfield Blue Devils program. So good luck to A-Dub over in Akron. Our crews will be on hand for that. We will talk about that next week when we have Steve Ronkowitz in this seat. But we're talking districts and regional baseball with Mark. And Mark, this game between Anthony Wayne and Springfield went to extra innings, district championship game on the line, went to 8 innings. Anthony Wayne was down as the 1 seed, came back, took down Springfield, 6-5 final score. As a neutral baseball fan, fantastic game to watch. If you're an A-Dub fan, great game to watch. If you're a Springfield fan, disappointing, so close.
Yeah, I'm good friends with both coaches and real good friends with Dave 𝗦𝗽𝗵𝗵𝗫. And we, as I told you before, we spoke on the phone Saturday night from about 11 to 1 in the morning.
Yep.
And you know, as we've talked many times, that Springfield is a team to watch for. And Dave thought he had and he did. He had a good team. Thought he had the team to possibly to get to a regional, and they gave Anthony Wayne everything they could. My understanding, I didn't do that game. I did the other half of it.
Yeah.
But my understanding, it wasn't a well-played game as far as the number of errors and some walks at the end of the game. Springfield was up 5-3 in the 7th inning and walked a handful of guys. Some wild pitches and things like that happened. But that's a sign of also a good team from Anthony Wayne. You don't play your best baseball because they made some boo-boos as well, and you don't play your best baseball and you find a way to win.
Oh, 100%, especially at this point. It's not like a best-of-3 series, or it's not necessarily like football where the better team consistently or will win a playoff game. When it comes to baseball, if you got a pitcher who's on, or you have a bad day at the plate, or that you talked about those errors and wild pitches, and Coach 𝗦𝗽𝗫 was admittedly so in saying that those came back to bite us. You can't give a team 4 and 5 outs in an inning.
No, especially a good team, really any team, but a good team like Anthony Wayne, you can't give them extra outs. And Springfield, Dave told me one of the big parts of the game was they jumped on them 3-0 in the first inning and then gave up another 2 spot to let them back in. So that was a part that he thought, if they would have stopped them then, they could have gained some momentum. But they gave up that, they lost some momentum by giving up those 2 runs.
Yeah, and these teams play each other all the time, twice a year, being both in the Northern Lakes League. But Anthony Wayne has that tradition-rich program of which you were a part of and building that for nearly 2 decades. But Springfield had never, ever won a district championship and advanced to regionals. So this was they were on the brink of history, and it would have been a seismic win for Coach 𝗦𝗽𝗫𝗵𝗫 and the Blue Devils.
Yeah, it would have. We talked about that as well. He said, we could have gone back to Bowling Green State University where he coached. He's a Bowling Green native, Bowling Green State University grad. And, Dave gets the most out of what he has at Springfield, and he always has. No matter what the talent level he has, he's always going to get the most out of his players.
Yeah, and Coach Ryan Donnelly on the other side for Anthony Wayne. They earned that 1 seed in the district and have played very well. And he said that his team was outplayed by Springfield in that singular game for 2.5 hours. But credit to Anthony Wayne in the sense of having a team that didn't tuck their tails and go and pack it up and have their season end short. They played on and got it to where they needed to be, where they could put some pressure on Springfield and get runners on base and score that winning run or the tying run and the eventual winning run there. Yeah. So hats off to them as well. And Tommy Ling was the guy who came up with the base knock. And, sometimes it's not always that clean line drive single to the gap. Sometimes they find a space where they're in, and that's where it happens.
Something interesting happened at the end of the game where there was some substitution and re-entries. And Dave talked about that too. He's, sometimes you second guess yourself. He'd take a center fielder out, which happens to be his son, who's a very good defensive center fielder. And he feels like, nothing against the young man that was out there, but when you make that many substitutions, sometimes it doesn't work out well.
Oh, yeah.
So.
No one bats 1,000 in the hiring process. Nobody bats 1,000 at the baseball plate, or nobody bats 1,000 when it comes to making strategic moves as a coach, head coach, or assistant coach, or coaching staff. But hats off to both of these programs representing their school and community as well. So Anthony Wayne does advance. They're going to take on St. John's. St. John's was victorious over Clay. So we had an all NLL district showdown, and then we had an all track district showdown in the final iteration of the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. And St. John's a little more easier time as far as the final score, a 6-2 win in their district, which is played down at a beautiful Liberty Benton High School stadium field. Coach Sam Fisher had sophomore starting pitcher John Tober on the mound through a complete game. When you got a sophomore throwing filthy fastballs and splitters and getting you all the way to the finish line with 100 pitches, you'll take that any day.
He put on an absolute pitching clinic. He did not throw the ball out over the plate the entire game. He kept the ball on the black, on the inner half, the outer half. He was at the inner third, outer third the entire game. Did not give Clay any good pitches to swing at. And he had enough, his velocity as a sophomore, he's not overpowering. He's 80 to 82 mile an hour. And then he throws a split changeup at about 70 to 72, and he had him out on their front foot. A lot of rollover ground balls, weak fly balls, and he got some strikeouts too. He pitched a great baseball game. He's probably about 70% strikes.
Yeah, and the damage on offense, J.P. Wagner, he's been there, done that for the Titans all season long. He came up with some RBIs, and so did Will Nikars as well. So this St. John's team, who has a number of players on this roster who were a part of the program a couple years ago when they made a trip to state, they're knocking on the doorstep. 2 more wins in regionals, and they'll do it once again.
Well, the other name I want to mention for St. John's is Caleb Click, their catcher. I mean, you can't pitch a game like that without having a guy behind the dish that receives the ball and blocks the ball as well as him. He's a key component, and I always like to bring up the catchers because they don't get enough love.
Oh, yeah.
They're like an offensive lineman in football. They don't make the stat line for those 5 blocks or that borderline pitch they get for a strike. And he was doing that for Jonathan Tober.
Yeah.
He a good catcher he might get 5, 6, 7 strikes a game or take away from him.
Right.
So, I have to give a shout out to.
Yeah, definitely. In the case of, they're kind of like a long snapper or a punter on the football field, where if you hear their name, that's not a good thing. When you don't hear their name, that means that they're doing their job. But yeah, good call by you as well. And then Coach Phillips on the other side for Clay. The program that he's run over there for a decade, and what they've been able to do, and going up against a really talented St. John's team, and J.P. Wagner going to the University of Toledo next year. They've battled and had played St. John's relatively closely in the regular season, but Clay just comes up short and sees their season come to a close.
Yeah, and they beat Clay 3 times this year, and that to beat Clay to me was one of the better teams in Northwest Ohio this year, and to beat any team 3 times, as Anthony Wayne did Springfield and St. John's did Clay, that's a very difficult task, and hats off to them. I mean, Clay had a deep pitching staff. CJ was down for a lot of the season. He pitched, and he wasn't as sharp. Yeah. He couldn't find that consistency in that slider that he has, and I think that's his out pitch. But he was down with mono for, and you just don't recover from that. Yeah. So, he'll have a big year for him next year.
All right, so it's St. John's taking on Anthony Wayne. That game is the Thursday 5 o'clock game at BGSU Stellar Field. That is the regional semifinals. You win Thursday, you play Friday. That's the setup for all the regionals, no matter what division you're talking about. So we got Sam Fisher, St. John's coach, going to play against his alma mater. He played at Anthony Wayne, not against his old coach, that would be you, but going against Coach Conley. And what do you see in this matchup, Mark?
Well, Anthony Wayne has a lot of depth. Okay, we've talked about that. What I see in St. John's, I've had them 3 times this year. What I see as them is they get along very well. They like each other.
The chemistry.
The chemistry. And I think that comes directly from Sam Fisher. And you can see him. He did that his first full year. Well, the first year was COVID. Then the first full year, he took his team to the Final Four. They were a little bit down last year, came back this year. And you could just see how well they get along. They play loose. They play outstanding defense. They don't club it, I mean, they don't have the big sticks.
Yep.
But they've got enough production. They put the ball in play and put pressure. But I think their defense, their approach to the game, the way they stay loose, it's going to be a very competitive game.
You got any hunch on who you think might be starting on the mound for either of the teams based on what you've seen so far?
Well, I think Braden Weiss is going to pitch for Anthony Wayne. I mean, he's 10-0.
Right.
I got his numbers here.
First team all NLL.
Yeah, 52 to third innings. He's given up 7 earned runs, 79 strikeouts, .93 ERA, 10-0. That's all state numbers there. I don't think there's any question. I don't know that for a fact. I didn't ask Ryan. I'm not going to ask him. But I would say that he will be facing Mattamore from St. John's. And St. John's, I haven't seen Mattamore throw, but he throws. I know he's more of an off-speed guy, keeps you off balance. He's not a heavy strikeout guy. Will throw strikes and make yourself it will get the hitters, make themselves get outs.
Yeah, okay. And Anthony Wayne, the latest state rankings that you saw, they're up there. They climbed up.
They climbed to 10, and I believe in the PBR, if I look at it here,
Prep Baseball Reports,
Prep Baseball
proud
Reports.
Partners and sponsors along with BCSN.
They're 6th in that overall and 5th in Division I.
Okay, yeah. So, and we were talking about that list in which back in April we didn't see any Northwest Ohio teams on those top 20 state rankings, but as Anthony Wayne has run roughshod over the NLL, they have gotten up into the rankings and deservedly so.
Yes, they have. And Sylvania Northfield, don't forget about them just because they got knocked out. They got some votes as well. 25 wins this year. That's hard to do. And they had another great season. They just couldn't get by.
Clay.
Anthony Wayne.
Clay. They lost to Clay in the districts there. So, all right. So St. John's Anthony Wayne Thursday, 5:00 at BGSU. That game will be live streamed on the BCSN Now app. So take a look at that on Thursday. All right, let's go to Division II now. Central Catholic in the district championship game, falling to Defiance 2-1 on a walk-off, also in extra innings, in 8 innings. So Defiance will advance to face Bay Village Bay Thursday at BG's Carter Park. That's a 5:00 game. Central Catholic, I mean, they battled. Keeping in mind that Defiance is number 4 in the state, keeping in mind that they had a number of wins, 26 wins and just 4 losses now. And with Central Catholic playing that brutal schedule within the track and then testing themselves outside of their conference, they finished 14-11. But a 1-1 game. It was 1-1 in the 7th inning. Central Catholic got a run across on a wild pitch, similar to the Anthony Wayne Springfield game, to tie it up 1-1 in the 7th. It goes to 8 innings. And then Central Catholic gave up a base runner and then gave up the walk-off RBI hit by Defiance's Christian Conley.
Yeah, and Defiance is also ranked PBR they're ranked 10th overall of all divisions. Yeah. So they're a quality team. I was so excited I get to call that game, and I couldn't wait to see it because you were going to see discipline, you were going to see fundamentally sound teams, 2 Hall of Fame coaches going at it. And you talk about Central, because I had them in the semis too, and that was a 1-run game against Rossford. And you talk about grinding and getting the most out of your team. Jeff 𝗦𝗫𝗃, I can't say enough for what he's done. And, losing his top 2 arms for most of the season and going to some younger guys. And the 𝗍𝘆 kid came on and threw a great game. And he got some depth out of his younger guys. And it was a lot of fun to watch. It was that game that you didn't want to see either team lose. Yeah. It was just, Bucky Bishop, man, what a competitor that young man is. I mean, he is just fun to watch. And he does anything for the team that asks for. I know he's not one of their top line arms, but he came in and gave him a chance to win at the end. And what a competitor he is. Oh,
yeah. I mean, you could tell just by the lineup that Coach 𝗦𝗫𝗃 had on the mound. Winston 𝗍𝘆, Cody Marcus, Bucky Bishop. If you're going to go down, you're going to go down with your horses, and having those types of players out there, competitive spirit, guys who kind of just laid it all out there against a 4th-ranked team in the state rankings, 26 wins, and it was a 2-1 game. It was the 2nd time that they lost 2-1. They played each other back at the end of April, and it was also a 2-1 loss for Central Catholic against Defiance. So you kind of knew knew what you were expecting, and that game lived up to those expectations, and it wasn't some random, walks, hits, errors, or whatever the case may be that altered what would have been an expectation of a solidly played game, and we got that on Saturday.
And then Defiance had their number one pitcher down too. He's out for the season, going to Akron, and so they had to reach down. They do have a lot of depth. Defiance doesn't have one home run this year. They're a scrappy running team. Their 4-hitter was bunting for hits, sacrifice bunting. Tom Held, just like Jeff Mulcarrick, they always know the type of team they have, and they play within their personnel or coach within their personnel.
Yeah, and you mentioned the catcher earlier in this podcast. Also want to call out Kyle Wasserman for Central Catholic in talking about a solid base running team from Defiance. Kyle Wasserman just shut them down.
2 guys early.
Yeah.
Two guys early.
And tell me, from your perspective, when you gun down runners, whether it's at second or third or pick them off at first or something, how that changes maybe a coach's ability to give that steal sign to a runner at first or a runner at second when early in the game it's boom, boom, see ya.
Well, mentally it affects you. I mean, you see the first 2 guys and good base stealers. Both base stealers had over 20 steals. But again, with your personnel, in my opinion, you still got to keep sending them. And I think Tom Held in the right situation would have done that.
Yeah.
But he got into a situation where he started using the bunt a little bit more. And, the pitchers were holding, Winston Delp was holding runners very well. Also, so that was a big help too, because you don't always steal a base off of the catcher. You more times than not you steal it off of the pitcher. So the pitcher's got to control the running game as well.
Yeah, another as we wrap up this Central Catholic game against Defiance conversation, Mark. One thing I noticed in watching that game, Winston Delp pitched 5 2/3 innings, allowed just 1 run on 3 hits. He did have 4 walks and he hit 2 batters, but during his time, yes, runners were on base, but they only got 1 run, and that came late in the ballgame in the sense of both sides had to make plays defensively to keep the runners off the board. It wasn't just a pitcher just mowing down everybody.
It was not.
There was action in the field that prevented them from getting runs.
Winston Delp really grew on me for 2 games that I saw them. I mean, he is not flashy, but you talk about a steady player that is just consistent at the plate, on the mound, at third base, wherever he plays. He also closed the Rossford game throwing 14 pitches 2 days before that.
Right.
And took the ball right away. There was no hesitation, I could tell. And we interviewed him after the game, and, what a quality young man.
Yeah,
he's going to Hillsdale College to continue his career.
The Delps and Hillsdale, one and the same over there. So season ends for Central Catholic. A great season, competing all the way to the district championship game in a 2-1 extra inning loss. Let's wrap up the district championship conversation with Ottawa Hills in Division III, taking down Archbold 11-2, and this game was atypical of the games that we've talked about thus far during this podcast, Mark. Ottawa Hills was dominant. Sebastian Stevens, I know that we had that conversation, or I was talking to Coach Chris Hardman and trying to get a sense of who could be attack pitcher or player of the year, and he said, keep in mind Sebastian Stevens, and junior lefty. I mean, he was, you talk about give me the ball. He was just mowing them down. He was mowing them down, and Archbold really didn't have an answer until deep in the ball game.
I didn't get a chance to see that ball game, but I've seen Sebastian. I saw him like the first week of the season against Bedford, and I'm like, wow, this kid can throw it. So, and talking to Coach Hardman, he said that he'll put him out on the mound against anybody, and he feels like his team can compete with anybody around at any level of high school level, I should say, with a Division I, II, III, IV, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that because he's got some good stuff.
Yeah, 21 wins and just 11 losses, so they're going to advance after beating Archbold. They will go up against Gahanna Columbus Academy. Gahanna, as you might think, in the Columbus area, so that game is going to be Thursday at 5 o'clock. Yes, that game can be seen live on the BCSN Now app. That's going to be at Patrick Henry High School, Gerald Parrott Field, one of the best areas to have a superb field and playing surface down there, so that game will also be Thursday at 5 o'clock. And with this game, it's what I tell my 11-year-old baseball team, Mark, in the sense of you can go 0 for 3 at the plate, but you can still make an impact on the game some way, somehow, whether that is defensively, or if you're a pitcher, or if you get on base by hit by pitch or a walk, you can be a great base runner. You can advance on pass balls, or you can get a good lead and get a good jump and get a steal, lead to a run on a pass ball. You might not get hits, but if you get on base, you can still affect the game in a variety of ways. And that's kind of what Ottawa Hills did in this game against Archbold. They scored 11 runs. They only had 7 hits, but they got on with walks and hit by pitches, and they moved those runners over. You talk about bunting. Coach Hardman was laying down the bunt sign quite a bit and advancing some runners, and it worked.
Well, he's a bunting coach. He'll use that. He'll use a lot of different tactics in his coaching toolbox. But to beat Archibald, which is a storied program in itself,
Coach 𝗦𝗽cie,
outstanding job that they do out there. And yes, you can do a lot of different things. You know what, Justin? You don't even need to be on the field. You can be a leader. Yeah. You have to pay attention to the game, pay attention to detail. So if you're called on, if you're not called on, if you're a bench player, you can give words of wisdom. You can pat your teammates on the back. You're cheering for them. You can pick up things maybe that the pitcher's doing, or variety of things. So pay attention, because you don't know when your number is going to be called. And Central used their bench. Coach 𝗦𝗽cie used their bench a lot too, and you could tell his kids were prepared. Yeah,
and A.J. George, one of the star players for Ottawa Hills, got it done, delivering some RBIs and having those clutch players. We're going to talk about role players here in our Question of the Week segment here in just a little bit, but you're relying on your big guys, your horses on the mound, and what I referred to them earlier when it comes to pitching, but also your star players with the bat and the ability to, in a clutch position with runners on base, 2 outs, got to come through to get your team on the board, or increase a lead, or get your team back in the lead, or tie the game, what have you. A.J. George is one of those players.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Ottawa Hills has, they have some pitching depth. We talked about Sebastian Stevenson, but you got Jack Eidenhower, you got Eideneer, and you got Jackson Snyder, and you have Noah Hamilton. So you have 3 guys. So they have some depth. So you got an ace, and you have 3 other guys in the hole that can win you some games as well.
All right, so a recap there. St. John's taking on Anthony Wayne. Both of those 2 teams still alive. That's track versus NLL there. And then we have Central Catholic wrapping up their season. Defiance from the Northwest Ohio area advances to the Division II regionals. And then we have Ottawa Hills taking on Gahanna Columbus Academy. All those games at Thursday, 5 o'clock. Matchups for those, so check out the BCSN Now app if you're not able to attend those games in person. All right, so let's go to our final segment here.
It's time for the BCSN Nation Podcast Question of the Week. Send us your question on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using the @BCSN Sports and #BCSN Podcast.
Okay, so we posed this question similarly last week to Steve Rockowitz in regards to area teams still alive in the regionals, possibly advancing to states. Yes, we've talked about their star players, and deservedly so, because they are key contributors statistically and captains, et cetera, on getting their team to the finish line when it comes to game, week to week, month to month here. But as we look at these 3 teams, Anthony Wayne, St. John's, and Ottawa Hills, still alive. Anthony Wayne taking on St. John's Thursday. On the other side of that bracket, Medina and Worcester. No St. Ignatius there. A team that typically gets to this point in the season was eliminated. So the winner of the Anthony Wayne St. John's games will get the winner of Medina and Worcester. And that game, the regional finals, will be Friday, and that game this year will be at BGSU Stellar Stadium. So we got that to look forward to. So give me, with that matchup there, Anthony Wayne and St. John's, we talked about the J.P. Wagners, Brendan Weiss's star players. Give me some role players from those teams in your estimation, Mark, that can be a difference maker and have an impact when it comes to the final score.
Let me start with St. John's, and I'll go back to Caleb Click, the catcher. Again, you don't get a whole lot of recognition sometimes behind the plate, but the things he does for his pitchers as far as getting to close strikes, blocking pitches. So when you throw an off-speed pitch and you're going to miss, you need to miss down. And if you don't have a catcher that blocks the ball well, you're probably going to throw the ball up. And you don't want to miss up with an off-speed pitch.
Oh, yeah.
So he does an outstanding job of letting those guys pound the ball in the dirt if they have, go ahead, I'm going to block it. John Tober, who threw the district final game against Clay, was on the edges the entire game. And the umpire was giving the outside pitch almost on the white of the batter's box, but 𝗦𝗽𝗃 made that look like a strike. And so when you can do that as a catcher, that's huge. And people just, the normal baseball person does not notice that. You know, when I built a team, number one, it was from a catcher.
Yeah.
You can have the best pitching staff in the world, but if you don't have a catcher, you may not win the big games.
Right.
So they have a chance because you got a guy like that behind the plate.
100%. 100% agree. Okay,
yeah.
So that's your checked box there for St. John's. What about Anthony Wayne?
Well, I know these kids more than anybody, any other team, obviously, because I've taught them all. But I'm going to go with Mitch Harder.
Okay. Why?
Mitch Harder has been used. He's an outfielder. He's a first-team all-league outfielder, NL outfielder, but he's also come in some big games pitching. He comes out of the pen for him, and he gets the job done. He came out of the pen against Springfield. He's coming out of the pen multiple games. His numbers, 22 and 2/3 innings. These are all in relief. 25 strikeouts. He's 5-0 with a .64 ERA.
Wow.
They've been going Weiss, Curry. Curry's been struggling just a little bit lately at times, and they've gone to Mitch. And Mitch wants the ball. He asks for the ball. He likes to come in relief. He likes it even more than starting, and he's really saved them. I mean, if you don't have that kind of depth, against Springfield, and you get down like that, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
and they've got that. So I would have to go with Mitch Harder, and then offensively, he's hitting .391 with 20 RBIs, and I think he's a key component to that squad getting to, possibly moving on.
All right, so they take on St. John's. So those are the two role players to look at when it comes to both sides for the Titans and the Generals. Let's look at Ottawa Hills then. They take on 𝗦𝗃𝗃 Academy. Winner there takes on the winner of 𝗦𝗃𝗃 and 𝗦𝗃𝗃. Edison out of our BCSN Erie Sandusky market, a team who has won the districts 3 years in a row. So they're in comfortable territory at this point in the regionals. But Ottawa Hills, give me a role player for them. Yes, we know about Sebastian Stevens. He will probably be on the mound, I assume, on Thursday's regional semi. So who else will have an impact?
Well, I have to repeat what I talked about just a little bit ago. I got to go with three.
All right, go ahead.
I got to go with the three other
You're
pitchers.
excused.
Jack Eideneer, Jackson Snyder, Noah Hamilton. You can't do it with one guy. Mm-hmm. And these guys all have around 30 innings themselves. So without those three, Ottawa Hills doesn't win, 21-11?
Right.
They don't win 21 games.
Correct, yeah.
You have to have a little bit of pitching depth, and they have it. So I have to go with those three guys picking up, some innings throughout the year and even the rest of the tournament.
All right, so we have those area teams also in the greater Northwest Ohio area. Tiffin Calvert is still alive. And we got Attica Seneca East in Division 4 still alive. So good luck to all of those area teams that represent Northwest Ohio well. So the BCSN Nation podcast powered by Marco's Pizza each and every week. We got a couple more to go here as we wrap up the spring into summer sports portion of the schedule here, powered as always by Marco's Pizza. So again, those games involving Milan Edison versus 𝗦𝗃𝗃, St. John's versus Anthony Wayne, and Ottawa Hills versus 𝗦𝗃𝗃 Academy. All those games on Thursday can be seen live on the BCSN Now app. The Anthony Wayne versus Watkins Memorial girls softball state semifinal game can be seen live on tape delay on BCSN. We're in the state tournament, so we have some restrictions when it comes to broadcasting live stream games, but good luck to Coach Ron Myers and the Lady Generals in trying to achieve a state championship. So, okay, Mark, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Hopefully we're talking about a state championship winning team or teams from our area. That would be fantastic as we continue here on the BCSN Nation podcast powered by Marco's Pizza. That is Mark. I am Justin. Thank you for listening and or watching each and every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. A new episode coming your way anyway you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.